Yay. Hello. So, could we take a happy screenshot of everybody before we actually start? That would, oh yeah, do the hair, flip the hair. Go for it. Brilliant. Let's have a happy screenshot. Excellent. Thank you, Zinat. Do you like
Wait,
to ask
two more
permission
to
to
do.
do
Hang on a
that?
second.
Gosh, it's like a wedding, isn't it?
There we go. Happy faces.
Yay.
And one more happy face because we've got blue spotting.
Brilliant. Thank you. Amazing.
There we go.
Okay, so in case you hadn't worked it out, I'm Pam Rigdon, founder of NLP for Coaches. And here we are today, and we are going to be working through one of the masterclasses, which forms part of the program which I teach. Actually consists of 12 topics. We're doing one of those, and it is, of course, beliefs and limiting beliefs. And I think the tagline was how to help your clients shift their limiting beliefs quickly. I believe that was it. And wow, you are all here. So what would be really helpful at this point is if you could pop in the chat what it was that kind of made you think, I'm going to put my name and email in those boxes and sign up for them. This sounds like a good idea. I'd love to know why you did that and what it is you're hoping to get from this session. That would be really helpful. Again, this chat is going curious about NLP. Okay, these are going to flash past really quickly. NLP, of course, is a huge topic, and we're doing a tiny little bit of it, but actually one of the most useful bits of it. So and that's based on 23 years of experience. A refresher, yeah, we always have actually a lot of NLP practitioners and master practitioners who join us for these sessions, because all NLP trainers actually have a different approach to teaching, and what they bring in can be very different. So it's always worth a refresher, certainly. Everybody wants to learn more, wants more tools specifically for limiting beliefs. Yeah, limiting beliefs seem so ingrained. Yeah, we're going to be talking about that. Oh, someone has so many of their own. Yes, absolutely. You will pick up tips and tricks to address those. We have a fitness coach, Sarah Ashley. Hello. I don't know. Some of you may know that. That's actually my background. Before I started training coaches, I trained fitness professionals in NLP. So relatively new to coaching. Great. It really, again, when we run these classes, some coaches are really new, some are still in training, and then others have been coaching for years and years. And really, everybody finds this session as useful. So it really is not mattering where you are. Oh gosh, just finished a triple accredited diploma. Wow. Okay, want a deeper understanding for your clients and for you. Brilliant. That was Matt. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. It's always great to know why you actually are here. And the why, the big why, is where I always start with all of my teaching. I teach using a format which basically consists of the why, the what, the how, and the what if. And the reason that we do that, and I was taught to do this in my NLP trainers training, is because we all think differently. We all need to feel motivated to learn. And we are all, some of us are motivated by knowing what the why is. Other people are motivated, they want to know what it is. Some people just want to skip to the how. We even had someone ask today if they could just come for the how. That was a no. And then the what if, that's, well, wow, now I know all of this stuff. What if I did this with it? What if I did that with it? And that's what really excites some people. I'm a what if person. And if I wasn't, we wouldn't all be sitting here right now, because I sat in my trainer's training thinking, what if I wrote a course called NLP for fitness professionals? And that's exactly what I did. And 18 months later, I was running the first version of that course. I had no idea that it was the only course of its type in the world. I was clueless. It would just seem like a good idea to me. And as a result, I was invited to speak internationally around the world to huge conventions of fitness professionals in Australia and the States. And eventually I ended up through Joyce living in Canada and working with CanFit Pro. And I did that for 10 years before coming back to the UK. And then I shifted my focus to actually working with coaches. And here we all are. So what if? But we're all different. And that's why we cover all four aspects. And the why, the big why. Well, I haven't yet met a coach who didn't come to coaching. We all are here because we want to help people, our clients. And there is always more that we can do so that we can do that more effectively. And I guess we all have a sense of that. And that's part of why you're all here. You are wanting to have more tools in your toolbox to be able to help your clients. And specifically this session, why it's so important that you have this knowledge, and then we move on to the how. Why it's so important is because, well, coaches, we all talk about beliefs and limiting beliefs. And yet it seems to me that actual coach training, particularly that first sort of 60 hours that you do, is, I think the phrase I use is woefully inadequate when it comes to actually giving you specific tools that you can use to work with your clients' limiting beliefs. So we all talk about it. And in my experience, when I meet coaches, they don't really have that much to rely on. And it's so important that you do, because when a client is stuck, when they're not moving forwards, when they're procrastinating, and these are all variations on a theme, aren't they? When they're saying they're going to do one thing and then they don't do it, or they do another, when they're 2 steps forwards and 1 step back, essentially when they're not getting the results that they came to you for, 99 times out of 100, the reason why is because they have a limiting belief of some type and description. And on coach training, and also in NLP, usually the first thing you do is to kind of learn some different goal setting models. And we all ask that question, what do you want? What are your goals? We all have different ways of doing that. But actually, there's absolutely no point in doing that if your client has limiting beliefs, because they're not going to achieve those goals. So if your client has a limiting belief of I am not good enough, even if they haven't verbalized that, if they're thinking it, even if it's held unconsciously, that is what then comes through and it impacts the way they see the world, what's possible for them. It dictates their behavior. Their behavior determines their results. It determines their results with you. And so ultimately, if they're not getting what they came to you for, then that's a problem, not only because you want them to get what they came for, it's a problem for you and your business, because for you personally, because you're not going to feel that great, and you begin to lose confidence when clients aren't getting what they came for. And it's a problem for them because they're not getting what they came for. And it's a problem for your business because you won't retain clients if they don't get what they want. If clients don't get what they want, they won't tell their friends about you. So you don't get referrals. And so there's a huge reason why this is so important, and that you have these tools to be able to be more skilled in working with this particular aspect of clients' thinking, limiting beliefs. Because if your clients are stuck, you really better have something magical in your toolbox that you can pull out. And as I say, not everybody has that when they complete their basic coach training. Okay. And even when coaches have gone on to do some other pieces of training, NLP, that doesn't always tick the box, because actually NLP and coaching are very different skill sets, and they don't actually go together. NLP isn't coaching, coaching isn't NLP. And I have so many students who have done their master practitioner course, and they tell me that they don't use it within their coaching. And by coaching, I'm referring to the ICF definition. So a coaching conversation where we tick the boxes of the core competencies. They simply don't know how to bring their NLP training into those conversations. And this is why how I teach is very, very different. And it's also why we have the ICF accreditation, because I have spent 23 years getting to this point where I can say to the ICF, I can show you how these NLP tools can be brought into a coaching conversation, the essence of the tools, the techniques, so that coaches can be more effective. And that's the only reason we have the ICF accreditation, because as a rule, they do not accredit NLP because, as I say, it's not coaching. And you may not have realized that. So it's a huge why. There is a huge why as to why this is so important that you have these tools. And it's what I feel very passionate about. It's why I'm happy to run forward these classes in 1 week and know that there are 400 of you out there who have more tools in your toolbox from this day forwards. That makes me very happy. So that's our big compelling why. Okay. You're a coach. You want to help your clients. You want to be better at what you do. You want your clients to get the results they came for. When your clients get the results they came for, everybody's happy. Okay. Makes sense? Fantastic. So on that note of clients, for one moment, I would like you to think about, perhaps your most challenging client. And definitely a client, and off the top of your head, you can think of a limiting belief that they have shared with you in a coaching session. And we are going to pop those into the chat, because this has been really enlightening on our other 2 sessions, hasn't it, Zena? It's been like, oh, wow. Okay, so let's have a look at these. I'm not good enough. Yes, absolutely. Not good enough for promotion. Not good enough. I think there's a theme here already. Not worthy, not good enough, not good enough. Oh my gosh, they're going so quick. not good enough, not capable, not good enough. I don't deserve this. I always give up. Okay, I'm going to let them come in and then backtrack on some of them. Not good enough. Don't fit in. Wow. Okay. Goodness me. ND diagnosis. Yes, that one's interesting. It won't happen for me. It's not going to happen. Constant, I might fail. Oh my gosh, not good enough. All right. Let's let all of these come in and then we'll have a quick look back down through them. To go back, go back, go back, go back. Here we go. Okay. There are some themes here. Okay. I always say once is just once. Twice is, might be a coincidence. 3 times there's a pattern. And here we have it in the very first 3 comments that you've made. I'm not good enough. Not good enough for promotion. Not good enough. There we go. There's a theme. I am not. The thing about the not good enough is whenever we hear a comparison, that is indicative of limiting belief. So it might be phrased differently to that. Whenever there's an on the end of a word or enough, because it begs the question, not good enough for what or by whose standards? So it's more like whenever you hear that comparison, we're going to look at these, a checklist. It gives you all of these. Whenever you hear a negation, so a negative, I'm not likable, I'm not worthy, limiting beliefs, I'm not good with confrontation, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this success, I'm an inconvenience. Okay. Another commonality here is the I am. These are beliefs being stated at the level of identity, which is interesting. We're going to come on to so many not good enoughs. I don't have time. I'm too old, not capable, not good enough for a leadership role, not good enough. He believed he wasn't good enough for his relationship. I don't deserve this. There's a negation. I always give up. Those words, we're going to look at these a lot today. The always, the nevers, the nobodies, the nothings, they are called generalizations. And again, limiting belief. Whenever we hear one of those, okay, and they are really, somebody said this earlier about, they are intransigent because they are a generalization. I always give up every single time. It's non-negotiable, always, every single time, except that when you actually challenge that, it probably isn't every single time. And that's exactly how we challenge it, by questioning it. Okay, I suffer from depression and will never recover. There's the never word. Okay, so whenever you hear these generalizations, okay, not confident, I'm not the same person as I was before, I don't fit in, and I will never fit in. There's the never and the negation, the negative in the sentence. I always fail. There's the generalization. Okay. No one will listen to me. No one, generalization, not good enough. I shouldn't be here. There's a negative in there. I'll never be able to, generalization, don't feel good enough, not good enough. It won't happen for me, negative in there, and on we go. Now, the reason this is so interesting is because, as we saw in the chat earlier, there's over 100 of you here. You are scattered across the country and the world. You're all working with your own clients, and yet that could almost be the same person there in the chat. That the commonalities in how people express limiting beliefs is really where NLP comes into its own, because it's all there in the language. Now, a very, very simple definition of NLP, my definition: neuro is the head and our thinking, simple as it comes. The L, first and foremost, stands for listen, which aligns with the ICF core competency of active listening. Because if you're not listening, you're not going to hear any of these things when your client says them. So that's the very first thing that needs to happen, listening. And then the L traditionally stands for linguistic, but language will do. We are listening to what our client says, to their language, and we are listening for the P, which are patterns in their language. And I've already said 3 times is a pattern. Okay. And it isn't just that your client will exhibit these patterns. People across the country and across the world are exhibiting the same pattern. And this is where the science comes into NLP, because we look at the actual structure of those specific sentences, which is how we can spot and identify the limiting beliefs and the type of limiting beliefs. And that tells us the type, that informs us about the type of approach that we need to actually work with the different types, because they are different. Okay, we're coming on to look at the what in a big way in a moment. It's all in the manual for you, but this is a really whoa moment. And it's the 3rd time we've done it, and I'm still absolutely kind of blown away by the fact that, yeah, you are all over the country, and yet look at the similarities here between what your clients are saying. Okay, the negatives, the always, goodness me. There's a lot about neurodiverse traits here today, which is interesting. A lot. I'm not worthy, the negatives. I've tried this, not good enough. Money doesn't grow on trees. There's one. Who said so? Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Really helpful, really enlightening. Let's have a look then at the what, the actual official what, as it stands in the manual. I'm going to hopefully be able to find this. Whoop. No, not that one. This one. There we go. Oh my goodness, it's still where we were last night. My apologies. We were rather late finishing last night, to be fair. There we go. I think we're there. What? There we are. Here we go. All right. So the what. Let's start with this part of the what, shall we? We need to make it a little bit smaller. Let's talk about the neurological levels. This is a model that was developed by the rather wonderful and lovely Mr. Robert Dilts, who has been around in NLP probably for 10 to 15 years before I started. An amazing gentleman. And this is an incredible model, which I teach actually in the very first masterclass on our program. And the reason I teach it first is simply because it is my personal favorite model, because it was when I met this model on my very first day of practitioner training, and my what if brain went, what if? It's because of this model that I made that what turned out to be very life-changing decision. So it has a special place in my heart. It's incredibly helpful when we're thinking about limiting beliefs, and we're just looking at 3 of the levels in this model today, because limiting beliefs are stated at one of these three levels. You will hear them stated at the level of what we call capability or possibility. And these are the beliefs that, like the example there, are I can't. Okay. Of course, it could be I can. That would be what we call a supportive belief, whereas I can't, we would refer to as a limiting belief. That's what we call these thought processes, which is what a limiting belief is. It's simply a thought process that repeats, and we call the negative ones that aren't helpful limiting. And I can't is not helpful in most cases. I can't lose weight. Okay. There's a big difference between I can't lose weight and then somebody telling you, and it makes me very sad, this next statement, I am just a fat person and I'll never change. What's happened there, if we're talking about the same client, is the weight issue has now become part of that person's identity, hence the I am statement. And then, of course, we've got the never on there as well, the generalization. Okay, so that is the way it is, and there's no changing it. Not ever, because it says never. There's a huge difference between those two, which I'll talk about a lot today. And then we have beyond identity. These are sometimes called global beliefs. And this is a true one. This is one that a student on my very first ever master practitioner course that I taught came to the training with. And that was, the world is a cruel place and people are spiteful. So that's kind of huge. It's beyond simply I am, it's about the world. And in this case, the world is a cruel place. And it's about all of the people in the world, and they are all spiteful. So there are two humongous generalizations in that one statement. Okay. And we'll talk in a moment about how this particular student arrived at that belief, why she created that belief, why she came to that conclusion about the world. Okay. What I can tell you is that she'd been carrying that around for over 40 years. Okay, so let's have a look. So this is really important that you think in this way whenever you are listening. Remember the L, and you're listening for these statements. It's so useful to be able to pinpoint them as a, okay, that's an I can't, that's capability level, or that's, yeah, that's identity. We've got the I am in there, or whether it's like huge, just absolutely huge. It's really helpful because this will inform you as to what you do next and which of the particular processes that we'll be looking at you might use, or at least use first. Remember, we talked about having these magical tools that you can pull out of your toolkit. There are some processes, of course, and you are probably aware in NLP that processes are called techniques. I much prefer the word process to technique. There are some processes which we do not, I do not teach online because, in my opinion, it is not safe to use those techniques online. So those are excluded from the training that I offer when we're working in this modality. And one of those techniques, which you may have heard of, would be timeline therapy, TM, and all the different variations on that. And I'll explain why that is in a little bit, not just right now. So what we do have, however, what we can do is to take the essence of some of these big techniques and bring them into our coaching conversations using the templates that I'm going to be going through with you. And in all honesty, I have seen clients experience the same level of transformation as a result of working through these templates during a regular coaching conversation as I have seen them respond to these big, huge kind of rah, 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 loud, lots of loud music, kind of huge NLP techniques. And I suspect actually that the results that you achieve when you use the essence of these techniques in a far more measured way during a coaching conversation, I suspect that the results are actually more long-lasting, more sustainable than they ever will be in a kind of boom moment. Okay, that's my opinion. Okay, so here we go. This is a huge, I've just mentioned this one. The world is a cruel place. People are spiteful. That is absolutely huge as a limiting belief. And I can remember just going back there, remembering what that was like, being there, working with a student, and that was kind of how they saw the world. And it's really a case of thinking about which level are we working with, because the I can and I can't level, the I can'ts, it will be easier as coach to actually help a client shift beliefs when they are at that level than it will be when the belief is held at the identity level or beyond. And that's because when a belief is about what we're capable of and our behavior, so I can't lose weight, that is about behavior. Whereas once they have identified with that issue, and so it has gone from I can't lose weight to I am just a fat person, what has happened there is the issue has become part of who they are, and it is always harder then to work with that, always. So be prepared for that. There's such a difference, a huge difference between the two. And when a client has both of those going on, you would start with the I can'ts in order to access the I ams. if that makes sense. Okay. So start with the easy ones. And it does, doesn't it? It brings to mind the very famous quote, this one. The whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you are right. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, and that's the point, because it really is the point, because our beliefs are what we hold to be true. Our beliefs are our sacred truth. And so when we believe we can't, we can't. It's as simple as that. And if we believe we can, they are our sacred truth. But they're not necessarily true. Okay? We believe them to be true. They're not necessarily true. And that is something that clients aren't aware of. They often assume that the way they are is the way they are always going to be. They don't understand that change is possible. They don't understand that change can be as simple as thinking differently. And so always the first thing that we need to do is to bring this idea that change is possible, that we can think differently, to our clients' awareness, that they can choose to believe something else. And that can really shake up somebody's head, because it's just never occurred, that's the word, never occurred to them that actually things can change and that they're in charge of that. Okay. And that awareness piece is really where all of this work needs to begin. And there's so many ways, isn't there, that you can bring your clients' awareness to this. Sharing this quote would do it. It's like, oh, okay. Ah, right. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. So what else do I need to tell you about the what? Okay. Neurological levels we've talked about. We're listening. Beliefs are formed in the past, sometimes a very long time ago. And we're listening now, in the here and now, in the present, for evidence of those beliefs that may have been formed years and years ago. And beliefs also are what they can be held consciously. It's what we say, they fall across the range of consciousness. So they may be held consciously, and your client knows that they have this belief. They may not recognize it as a belief, but it's something that they say. It's there, it's out there. And beliefs can be held completely unconsciously, in that your client doesn't actually know that the belief is there. And it will be running the show, but they're not aware of it. And because they're not aware of it, they're not likely to be saying it either. Now, this does present a problem, because if they're not saying it, you can't hear it, you can't work with it. But I do also believe that during the process of coaching, as we are taking off those layers of the onion, that you will get to it eventually. It will come out as you create that safe space for your client, as you build rapport with them. We're going to talk more about that and how you do that, as they trust you, that aligns with one of the core competencies that allows those beliefs that are held unconsciously to surface. Okay, that is a huge part of it. Now, yes, there are techniques within NLP, literally where we can go in and uncover those unconsciously held beliefs with permission, of course, of our client. Again, that is not something that anybody, in my opinion, should ever do online because of where that could end up. Because let's think about it for a moment. If a belief is held unconsciously, your client is not aware of it, this suggests that there are memories that they are not currently aware of. And there could, for example, be trauma, serious trauma in their past that has been affecting how they show up in the present, but they are not actually aware of what that trauma is. And when you use these techniques like this one, prime concern elicitation, incredibly effective, incredibly useful when used in a therapeutic context. So that takes us into a conversation about scope of practice, because coaching is not therapy, of course. So what can happen is your client potentially could drop back, what I call drop back, into a traumatic memory that they previously had no awareness of. And some people, when they recall things, when they remember, they do so in what we call a very associated way. So they will go back to that time and they will be there as though it is happening all over again. Now, that's fabulous when it's a happy memory, because they get to experience that happiness all over again and it's real. If it's a traumatic memory, I don't need to tell you, do I, what that could be like for them or is like for them. And that is a situation that you don't ever want to happen in a Zoom room, because you have a legal duty of care to your clients. And if someone lands back in a traumatic memory when they were aged 2 or 3, for all intents and purposes, you could have a 2 or 3-year-old on your hands on the other side of the world in a Zoom room, and they might not even be able to verbalize what's happening to them because they're too young in that moment. That isn't okay. And that is why I am so very, 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 very on my soapbox about this and certain NLP techniques, timeline therapy, this one, prime concern elicitation. So, and why we don't do it. And I think it's really important to share that, because what I don't want to happen is for anybody to go off from this class and think, whoa, I'm going to go and train in all of these techniques and not realize that actually you shouldn't be using them online, because not everyone will think this through and think about what could potentially happen. So it's really important that we cover that. It's important that you understand and have an awareness that that is possible, but you also don't need those particular techniques as a coach when you're coaching in the ICF manner through the coaching conversation. And as I say, when you take the essence of these techniques and use them elegantly in a conversation, I believe you arrive in the same place in a way that is safe and then has real long-lasting results for your client. Okay? There's more than one way to do this. It's important to realize that. So that's my important bit that I need to share with you. So let me just tell you about that particular client with that particular belief of the world is a cruel place and people are spiteful, rather a student. We've talked about what a huge generalization that is. And this expression of this really helped me understand what a generalization actually is and what it means for our clients, because that is a generalization. Literally, at its worst, is how we take a single unhappy event and then turn it into a lifetime of unhappiness. Because generalizations are rules. We come to a conclusion, and then that's the way it is going forwards. That is just the way it is. It doesn't need to be. And I see this all of the time, all of the time. And that particular student, what had happened was she was at school, very beginning days at school, when she was 4 or 5 years old, and a significant emotional event for her. And it's important to realize when we use that phrase that it is significant for the client, and we are respectful of that, even if what they convey doesn't sound significant to us. It's their experience. And what had happened was some children had taken her sweets and thrown them on the floor. And that is the moment that she created that limiting belief of the world is a cruel place and people are spiteful. Well, the school playground wasn't a particularly nice place on that day, and those 3 or 4 children weren't being very kind, for sure. And then we have that, don't we? How we take a single unhappy event and turn it into a lifetime of unhappiness. Now, that was really important for me to understand when it comes to then thinking about how am I going to work with my client when they are expressing this kind of global, huge, limiting belief. And just knowing that that's what they've done in their heads is very helpful, because then it allows you even to share that with them. I often find that educating clients simply in the way that I am educating you today can be the most helpful thing that you can do. Literally say, well, that sounds like a generalization. And what that means is, and put that out there. And that in itself, that awareness here is absolutely huge. Okay, there it is, look, and there's the story. A limiting decision, I should probably, limiting decision is just really a great big limiting belief. And it's the one that came first before all of the others. So we have to make this decision about the world, and then people are spiteful. So the decision comes first, but it's kind of just really a big, huge limiting belief. So yes, so she made that decision, drew a broad conclusion, or made a rule about the world, okay, and created that limiting decision. Clients don't even understand that actually it is they who have created these thoughts. Sometimes beliefs do come from the external, and we've taken them on board from parents or those siblings, people who are around us when we are growing up sometimes, but then they're still ours. We've taken ownership of them. So it might be something that mum used to say, but actually now it's something that you say. So we can't blame mum because now it's yours, okay? But that is true, that sometimes we take them on from other people. Now, the other piece here, because these are three big words in the theory around limiting beliefs: generalization, and the other two are deletions and distortions. So if you go off and do any reading, you're going to come across these three words. So kind of want to explain what they mean, because they kind of sound big and complicated. And so we've covered generalizations. So let's just think then, this particular student has this limiting decision, this limiting belief in her head of the world is a cruel place and people are spiteful. Okay, she is going out there into the world thinking this, because that's all beliefs are. They are thought processes that we hold to be true. They may or may not be true, but for us, they are our absolute sacred truth. So she's going out into the world thinking that the world is cruel and that the people in it are spiteful. Now, we are absolutely intent on proving ourselves right. Okay, it's not helpful, but oh my goodness, we are absolutely determined that we are right, and we will defend our limiting beliefs. And this is important to know for when you start challenging your clients. We will do our damnedest to defend them, to the extent that we begin to distort. So when we go out into the world with this thought process, two things happen. One, we don't see anything that doesn't fit with our belief. So we don't see all the examples of kindness in the world. We just brush it all off. We don't see it. It's not, we do this. We push it away. And that's called deletion. Okay, just because what we see is our version, which is determined by that belief. And when it's a belief this huge, so we're ignoring, deleting all the examples of anything that contradicts our belief. And then the other thing that happens is we're so determined that we are right that we actually distort what we see to make it fit with our belief. And this is what was happening with this particular student, because she shared with us a number of scenarios, and this belief was really causing her issues in the workplace, understandably, because that was her adult version of school, and the people, the children in the playground, these were her colleagues. So she shared several scenarios where you and I would probably think, well, that doesn't sound spiteful, but she had, another word, I guess, is twisted it to make it fit with her version. And she was determined that this behavior was spiteful. So that's what begins to happen. You ignore everything else and you distort some of the things that you see to make them fit. And this is really important for you to understand when you're working with these beliefs, because really this is what you are dealing with. And especially when you begin to challenge your clients' limiting beliefs, that can take a lot of courage on your part, because the response isn't always even when you have your client's permission, which you should have to challenge their thinking before you challenge their thinking, even when you have their permission, they may not take too kindly to this. It can make people really quite grumpy because they will absolutely defend their limiting beliefs. Okay, which is why we have these very clever templates that we come on to that enable us to we're coming on to that bit in a moment, a little bit light humor. Yeah, they will absolutely dig in. That's the word I use, dig in. They will dig in and they're not giving this up. And with skillful questioning and gentle challenging, eventually they will. Okay, so we have, I think, covered everything that you need to know about what limiting beliefs are in terms of their structure and all of the information you need around the what. So I want to ask CNAT now. I'm going to come off the stop share because I'm actually wondering whether you're all still there. There they are. So I'm just seeing my notes. I'm going to ask CNAT now whether there has been any questions in the chat while I've been covering that we need to, yes, use this quote a lot, absolutely, that we want to address on the what before we move on.
No questions so far, but a lot of statements and people agreeing and experiences from what they've had. So some quotes in there as well.
Good. Well, the what is normally hopefully fairly straightforward.
Angela just saying, see this often when employees have appraisal reviews, focus on the one feedback comment about improvement rather than looking at the others. Leonara, so if we get a compliment, we don't accept it or acknowledge it at all.
Yes, no, if it doesn't fit with our belief about ourselves, then no, that's often why people deflect the compliments because it just doesn't land.
Yeah, the 99 compliments that Matt's written, but we dwell on the one negative as it fits our belief.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, I'm going to have a quick slug of my coffee. So, excellent. If we haven't got any actual questions, then what I'm going to do is go back to, yeah, it's learned. Yes, we learn this and we learn, we practice these thoughts so that they become habitual and they determine our behavior. And the only good news about that is that because we learned them, we can unlearn them. Okay, but it takes time and it takes practice because it's exactly the same as when you go into the gym and you do a kind of, if you were to go into the gym and do 20 bench presses or something, you wouldn't expect to come out and be stronger as a result of that. It takes time and practice and practice and practice. And similarly, when we have to unlearn, it takes time and practice. Okay, you have a question? I'll just take one. Mary. Hello, Mary.
Thank you. It was just a really quick one to say I have a raft of physical conditions and a friend of mine in a wheelchair was being coached and the coach was bashing on about limiting beliefs and my friend was made to feel that she ought to be able to get up and walk from her wheelchair and it was her limiting belief that was holding her there. So that was an extreme one, but I think you have to be really careful with beliefs and toxic positivity. I mean, I've been in and out the pain clinic, and it makes a massive difference when you hear somebody accept your condition and listen to you. And up until that point, I'd had physios tell me it was all in the mind and I should get on with it. I have chronic pain, and actually in the pain clinic being told, yes, you have chronic pain, then we could move on. So just a wee flag to everyone else. Just be really careful of toxic positivity.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And there is no toxic positivity here today. Absolutely not. For what it's worth, I have a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. I have received emails from other NLP trainers saying, you can't be much good at NLP, can you? Because you've got rheumatoid arthritis. Well, you can imagine that didn't go down well. It's a huge field. We can't really go into it, but the NLP around health and diagnoses, it's a huge field, but that is not the way to do it. And from both of those examples that you cited, Mary, the first thing I'm thinking is, well, those practitioners were not in rapport with their clients, were they? Because I would be saying to your physio, the first thing they need to do is to actually sit in the wheelchair with their client and put themselves in that bloody wheelchair and see it from their client's perspective. And if they did that, they would not be saying those things. And toxic positivity would never happen if they actually practiced NLP in the way that it is intended to be practiced and in the way that I teach it. It just wouldn't happen, because the first thing that you do is go and sit literally in your client's model of the world. And if they happen to be in a wheelchair, then you sit in the wheelchair with them until you get it from their perspective. And everything is driven from where they are, and you meet them there. So whenever I hear that, going to swear, shit, it makes me very cross. So yeah, no toxic positivity here.
That's great. I wasn't thinking of it from you, but just as a wee flag for everyone else,
Absolutely.
that is just really nice to hear. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. We've gone a little bit aside, but very important point to make. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Sorry,
Okay.
Pam.
No.
Just a quick statement, because I missed this one. Laura's Costa saying, I should statements, are these also in the realm of limiting beliefs?
Oh, yes, we're coming on to those. They're on the checklist. The I shoulds, the I haves, all of those, the I need tos, I must, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, absolutely. Those all indicate limiting beliefs. Okay, we've got one more and then we really do need to move on. Is that Prash? Can see, yes. Okay. Where's
Hello.
Prash? Hello.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this, Pam. So edifying, so much coming out here. Although I come from a coaching and mentoring background for several decades now, I also have a spiritual background. So I find that for certain people who have a faith-based belief system, I find that the I am statements, which have become obviously very popular these days, but I think have biblical and old connotations, could be very valuable. At some point, would you be speaking to the power of I am and other methods when used in a way where their state is receptive to it? Because it's all very well and good saying I am or I should or I can and saying positive affirmations, but surely it's also the state that the person is in that determines the effectiveness of those things landing within the subconscious. I just thought I'd mention. I also work with plant medicines, but that's a whole other conversation. So that would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You are so right. Affirmations are wonderful if somebody is in a positive place. And the thing is, if someone has a huge limiting belief of I am not good enough, or I'm a loser, I'm never going to get anywhere, it's kind of like, and you suggest that they start working with affirmations and saying, I am happy, I am positive. I believe what happens is their unconscious mind is kind of going like, no, you're not. And my sense is it doesn't really work. I think you have to address the actual specific limiting beliefs that are going on in here before you can use affirmations, anchoring, state management, building confidence, because usually in NLP, the courses, practitioner courses, start with goal setting, which we've already said doesn't work if someone has limiting beliefs. And then they move on to anchoring and how you can help somebody become more confident, which is great. And those techniques are very effective. But if someone has a limiting belief of I am not good enough, and then you start helping them to become more confident, again, their unconscious mind just kind of sometimes works in the very short term, but all the while that big limiting belief is there. And affirmations exactly the same. They don't land. It's not enough. That's my opinion. Is that kind of aligned with where your first thoughts were on that?
Yeah, very much so. I think there's a lot of congruence there, and certainly just from the experience of clients and people that I work with, I think there's a lot of truth there. So there has to be deeper inroads made and state change. I think the comments are coming through at the moment. The state change and physiology and other factors play a part. And because I work with entheogenics and nootropics, I feel that there are herbal and plant-based pathways to also amplify the receptive areas for better seeding, but obviously that's outside of the scope of this session.
It is. We should chat. All right. Okay. Thank you. We are going to move on because we need to try and stick to the schedule. We've got a lot to cover, but thank you. It's always lovely to hear from some of you and your thoughts, and to go a wee bit broader as well is really interesting. Okay, so let's have a look at this next piece. For a little bit, we can shake all of that off because this is kind of intense stuff, and we want to be a little bit more light-hearted, I think, for a moment. So let's look at this next section quickly. You can't coach wearing pajamas. I was told that several years ago. I happen to disagree. I have proven that that actually is not the case on numerous occasions. So I do have days when, frankly, it's tough energy-wise to get up and do the thing. And so I have coached in pajamas. So you know what? That's somebody's opinion. That's their belief. It doesn't mean it's necessarily true. It's true for them, not for everybody else. And this is where what I really want you to take from this section is our beliefs are true for us. Doesn't mean they're true or that they're true for anybody else, okay? Let's have a quick look at this. Beliefs about coaching. I've heard all of these. Literally, I've been doing this now for 23 years and I've heard all of them at some point or another. Let's have a look at these ones. These are the biggies, the globals. Here we go. The International Coaching Federation is the best coaching organization. The EMCC Global is the best. The Association for Coaching is the best. Okay, well, for the person who made those statements, that was their opinion, their truth. That's what they believe. However, they can't all be right, can they? So it kind of really brings that home that this is our opinion. It's true for us, okay? The benefits of coaching are transformational and life-changing. I'm hoping that in the Zoom room with 100 coaches that you all buy into that one. Coaching doesn't work. Yeah, I've heard that too. And for the person who said it, it was true for them. Coaching is better than therapy. Not surprisingly, that was a coach who said that. Therapy is better than coaching. Well, and that was a therapist. Two completely opposing views, both true because they were true for each of those individuals. Or we could get into an argument actually about which one is right. But let's not do that. Let's keep that for LinkedIn, shall we? Okay. And then I've heard all of these. identity level beliefs about coaching. I am too old to be a coach. I'm not old enough to be a coach. I don't have enough experience. I can't coach clients who are older than me. I think those should be on the capability level, really. I can't coach clients who are younger than me. I can coach anybody. I've heard that one. Not always helpful, that one, but I've heard it. I can't charge clients until I've finished my training. I've heard that one. Oh, and here we've got one. Let's spend a wee bit of time on this particular pattern because we haven't touched on this yet. Can you see the equal sign in there? Make it a bit bigger just in case you can't. Here we go. This particular pattern, let's not worry. Well, we will talk about the content, but this is a structure that you will begin to pick up on. And it is called a complex equivalence because of the equal sign. And what this means is that somebody, in this case a coach, is experiencing a particular situation. And in this scenario, this is a coach who is struggling to find clients. And in order to explain that situation, they have made it mean something. And here comes the distortion piece. And what they have made it mean is equals, I am not good enough at coaching. Now, that could be true. In most cases, when I have heard that particular pattern from a coach, that absolutely has not been the case. They have been actually really good at coaching. What they absolutely sucked at was their marketing. And so I am struggling to find clients could equal, and it would be accurate, I suck at marketing. I need more marketing skills. But they had made it equal that. And then, of course, their confidence plummeted and they were feeling pretty dreadful. And then because their confidence plummeted and they were feeling pretty dreadful, and because they believed that, that wasn't helping to find any clients, understandably, because that's what they were putting out there. Okay. And no client is going to sign up with you if you're doubting that you're good enough. Okay. That's called a complex equivalence. And you will come across that time and time again. I'm thinking of an example, many examples. When parents have told a child that they're going to show up for school sports day and they don't show up. Mum and dad didn't turn up today equals, and then what the child has made that equal, again, complex equivalence, distortion, equals, they don't love me. And then what they do with that, because we take everything personally in their heads, they then ask the question, if they don't love me, what must that mean about me? And what that must mean about me is that I am not lovable. That happens a lot. Okay. And the very first way that we address those complex equivalences, whenever you hear one, whether it's this example of the coach or an adult who has had this experience as a child, is to reframe using the what else question. What else could that mean? So I am struggling to find clients equals I am not good enough. What else could that mean? because at the moment it just means this one thing, and they're kind of tunnel vision on that. And we need to open it up to unpack that equals. What else could it equal? And it could equal, I've never been taught how to market myself properly. So those are skills I don't have, and we don't know what we don't know. For the adult who came to the conclusion when they were aged 5, 6, 7 that they were unlovable because mum and dad didn't show up for sports day, same question. What else could that have meant? Because now we're talking past tense, and it could have meant that the car broke down and they didn't get there. It could have meant that their sibling was unwell, and so their priorities changed. It could have meant they just forgot, and actually their parenting skills weren't that wonderful, and that's challenging, and it's very different to equals they don't love me. And as an adult, we can see all those other possibilities, and as a child, we make those experiences equal something. Okay? So it's always that, how do we unpack that equal sign? How do we do that? And it's what else can that mean? What else does that mean? Because it's just, what's happened is we've filed it in the wrong place. We've filed it incorrectly. We need to file it differently. That's all it is. And I often use that analogy with my one-to-one clients of, okay, so we've filed that in the wrong place. We've made mum and dad didn't turn up for school sports day equal that. We've kind of filed it. So can we file it differently? Okay. So those are important to notice. There's another one there. If I get more qualifications equals I will find clients. Well, I have heard that. A lot of my fellow training providers absolutely love it when coaches believe that, because it means they buy lots and lots and lots of training. So get onto that one, couldn't we? Will it though? That's the question. Yes, further training, CPD, will enable you to be a better coach. And going back to the example before, if the reason you're struggling to find clients is because your marketing isn't quite on point, then all the qualifications in the world aren't going to equal I will find clients. Okay. I love the way people's heads kind of do this. Capability level beliefs. Again, wow, you have to be qualified to be a coach. You don't have to be qualified. You need to have experience. You don't need to have experience. Qualifications are more important than experience. It's more important to have experience than qualifications. It's mind-boggling, really. And yes, the person who made this statement believed what they were saying. That last one, whoops, that was actually an ICF credential coach said that in a group of 12 coaches, and none of the others were ICF credential. You can imagine how well that went down. ICF credential coaches are better than and more skilled than all other coaches. She believed it. Is she right? Don't know. Anyway, you have to be ICF credentialed. And she went on to say that, otherwise you're not a real coach. You have to have a postgraduate qualification. to be successful. This one, ouch, and actually there's a typo there. It should say action coach business coaches are not real coaches. Whoa. Coaches can, oh, here we go. I totally, of course, believe this one. Coaches can use NLP within their coaching practice to be more effective. Of course, that's what I believe. I absolutely 100% believe that to be true. And I have plenty of evidence to suggest that it is. Now, what surprises people is that I don't necessarily disagree with the next one. NLP does not belong in the coaching space. I'm inclined to agree with that because I've already talked today about the difference between NLP and coaching. I've already shared with you that they are completely different skill sets. And if we're thinking of coaching with the ICF definition of coaching, supported by their core competencies, and we're thinking of NLP as a collection of techniques to address particular issues, then no, it does not belong in the coaching space. And in fact, that is the experience that many practitioners and master practitioners have who have come to NLP from coaching, because then what they find is they've got these two completely different skill sets and cannot, for the life of them, work out how to bring them together. They can coach, they can do NLP, they can practice NLP, but bringing them together, it is not the easiest thing to do. It has taken me 23 years to work out how to put this together such that the ICF said, okay, we'll accredit this. We agree. This can be brought into coaching in a safe way, in an effective way, and in a way that aligns with our core competencies. Believe you me, that has taken some quite a lot of thought, to say the least. Kirsten's not here today, my other one of my other global coaches who has helped me. She is a PCC who has helped me achieve that, because it has been easy. So yeah, so surprisingly, I actually agree with that one, funnily enough. Oh, I'm sure you're getting the point here now. Barefoot Coaching is the best coach training school. Henley is the best coach training school. Optimus, the coaching academy. The person saying them absolutely believes what they're saying to be true. Okay? Without a doubt. And then there's some beliefs about the business of coaching, which I've heard all of them. They're interesting. Nobody, there's one of those generalizations, will pay for coaching. No one, there's another generalization, knows what coaching is. I won't, negative, can't word, possibility, capability, be successful because there are too many coaches. The market is saturated. Well, what do we think about this? We could really, really have a lengthy discussion, couldn't we? I had a look the other day, a few weeks ago, at the numbers on LinkedIn. And I actually discovered that there are 303,000 coaches in the UK. And then I thought, well, I'm going to do some maths, because the adult population in the UK is about 45 million over the age of 25, give or take. And when you do the maths, that actually works out that there is one coach for every 130 people. Yeah. I don't know whether that means the market is saturated. I think what it means is, I don't really know what that means, but I found that quite Oh, wow. Okay. Sort of mind-boggling as a number. I think it's true to say that as coaches, we have to stand out. I do believe that. I think we have to stand out. The market is big and we have to stand out. I think we need to be qualified. We need to get experience on board if we're not experienced. We need to, there's a whole other debate, isn't there, about niching. Even niches are crowded now. If you do the same sums for a specific niche like health coaching. So is that enough? I don't know. Goodness, big numbers, niching. I think we do need to stand out and be committed to being the best that we can be, which we all want to be as coaches anyway. And I think certainly NLP is one way, it's one skill set that you can add to your coaching that will elevate your coaching skills. It will enable you to develop personally. It will enable you to build your business for the reasons we talked about earlier, that you will be more equipped to help your client get the results they came for. And we talked earlier about how important that is, because then everybody's happy. Okay, if they don't get the results they came for, then it kind of spirals downwards from there, or it can do. That really impacts coaches' confidence. So we need to do whatever we can. We need those magical tools in the toolkit to pull them out. Yes, NLP is one skill set. There are others as well. Of course, there are other trainings that you can do that will enhance your coaching skills. And I think given those numbers, we do need to stand out. We need to think about that. Absolutely. And I recall now thinking back to my experience when I was in the fitness industry. I went back to working in the fitness industry in my late 30s. And I can remember being at a fitness convention in the audience, feeling really quite frustrated, thinking, at my age, really, I should be on that stage. My peers were on that stage presenting Jive Bunny and big balls and what to do with them and all kinds of different sessions and bouncing whatsits but I didn't have a thing. I didn't have a thing. And what I didn't know was that literally 2 years later, I would be on that stage. And that was because a very dear friend suggested to me, Pam, if you want to help your clients, because frankly, my weight loss clients weren't getting the results they came for, go and learn NLP. And that's what I did. And as I say, on the day, literally day one, I was so wowed. It was like, okay, this is too good to simply take back to use with my clients at David Lloyd in Brighton. I'm going to write a course called NLP for fitness professionals. And that's what I did. And 2 years later, I was on that stage presenting, and then literally lots of stages around the world. So of course, I feel very passionate about NLP and what it can do for you personally, because when I was personal training, I had a group of runners. I was training for the marathon. And you know what? I literally struggled to speak to that group of 6, even though I knew them all. And we were just literally having a cup of coffee in the bar after the class, after training about the running. And I struggled. I am painfully shy. You may not realize that today. Here I am talking to over 100 of you. I really am. And that hasn't changed. But what did change was I equipped myself with tools such that when I present, I go into trainer state, and here I am. And going from not being able to talk to 6 people who I knew quite well, and we were just talking about running and training, I went to being able to teach. I think I used to be happy. I used to look down the schedule at CanFit Pro and think, they've put me in the big room. And I'd be delighted when I was speaking to an audience of 200-300 people, fitness professionals. And that's why I'm so passionate about this, because of course I wouldn't be here if I hadn't learned NLP, because I wouldn't know it to be teaching you. But it's so much more than that, what it can do for you personally. Anyway, so yes, and it was the thing that enabled me to stand out, because even at that time as well, personal training was very similar in that it was a very busy marketplace, shall we say. So there's a few more beliefs about niches. Yeah, well, do we have to choose one? Don't we have to choose one? Coaching is worth £50. Coaching is worth 500. All of these. And the key thing to take away from this session is literally the person who made these statements absolutely believed them to be true. They were true for them, their sacred truth. Okay. All right then. Oh, some more. I think you've got the idea now. All about coaching practice. You can't be a coach and mentor. You can't coach on the phone, Zoom, and yet here we are. Coaching on the phone is more effective. Coaching has to be long, and on it goes. Executive coaches should wear suits. Who said? Who said so? And there you go. You absolutely can coach while wearing pajamas. Maybe not if you have to go out into the world, into an organization, but if you need to, you absolutely can, I promise you. So beliefs, it's what we believe, it's what we hold to be true. And on that point, on that very particular point, it's what we hold to be true. Let me share my thoughts around, and I've called this stories and lies. And this isn't in any way intended to be critical. It's simply my observations on a trend which was really out there a couple of years ago. And I wrote a post about it on LinkedIn, and it kind of blew up, but I will explain my thinking behind this. Because I was beginning to notice more and more posts written by coaches who were talking and referring to their clients' limiting beliefs as stories, and in some cases, lies. And the kind of theme here was that they were basically saying, because we know that a limiting belief, it's what our client believes, but it's not necessarily true. So the bit they were focusing on was the not necessarily true. With the best of intentions, what they were doing was referring to the not necessarily true, and really focusing in on that and saying, well, this is just a story that you're telling yourself, or this is just a lie. You're just making up this big lie. But here's my issue with that. See, the way I was taught and what I've been talking about today, and it comes back to the point I made when I was talking with Mary, and I actually swore, our job, first and foremost, is to build rapport with our clients. That's what we call it in NLP. In ICF speak, it is creating trust, I believe. Can't remember the actual number core competency that is off the top of my head, but that's what it's called. That is our job, is to literally put ourselves into our client's model of the world and to sit in their model of the world. And if their model of world includes a wheelchair, in their wheelchair, in their shoes. We are leaving ourselves, and this is what we call first position, when we are in our own bodies, looking out through our eyes and hearing the traffic going past. And this is first position, but we are leaving first position behind, even if that means kind of getting up off the chair and walking over there. And I might just be thinking about my client at the moment, rather than actually being with them. And we are actually getting up and going and being our client. Actually looking out, and I need to turn around because it really emphasizes it, looking out through their eyes, hearing what they're hearing, and feeling what they feel. That is our job. Now, in some modalities, that's called empathy as well. So that's another word that works here. I believe, when you get that piece right, and it's the very first thing, as well as listening, that we need to be doing, when we get that piece right, that in and of itself will facilitate your client's change. Because really what people want, what our clients want when they are struggling, is to be seen. They want to be heard. This will depend on whether they're visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or a thinker, but they want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be felt. They want to really feel that you feel what they feel, that you get them. And they want to be understood. And when you go through that process of sitting in their model of the world, whether they're there or not, and if they are there with you, or even if they're on Zoom, when you do that, then everything changes. And my issue with this piece, with the stories and lies, is that anybody using that approach is completely missing that step. Okay, they're missing that because they're going straight for the not necessarily true piece. When in fact, what you have to do, what you absolutely have to do, is to honor your client's truth and their experience and their limiting belief. Even the world is a cruel place and people are spiteful. That is part of their experience. And it's your job to actually experience that with them as your starting point, so that they feel seen and heard and felt and understood. So your starting point is actually to be there with them, with whatever that limiting belief is, the I'm not good enough, the world's bloody awful, all of those. You have got to get in there with them in order to be able to help them move forwards. And this approach is just missing that essential step, because it's saying that's the story, as in it's not true. You're lying to yourself, as in it's not true. And we know as coaches that it's not true, but your client doesn't know that yet. For them, it is their absolute truth. It is their sacred truth. And so this approach is, in fact, massively disrespectful. And the thing is, if somebody were to accuse you of telling stories and lying, how would you feel? You'd be pretty defensive, annoyed, angry even, certainly very uncomfortable. Well, that's not how we want our clients to feel, is it? So anyway, that's my thoughts on that particular approach. And if that is something that you have used or are using, this really is simply an invitation to think about that, given the advice around building rapport with your client first and what that actually means and what the impact of not doing that could potentially be. Okay, that's my thoughts on that particular topic. And there's the actual post if you care to read it. And it's only going to get more. Oh, look what we've got coming next. This one, debunking imposter syndrome. Oh, goodness. Again, another, I used to write a post called Soapbox Sunday, actually, which is a little bit controversial. That's a marketing technique, but coming from the heart and what I do actually believe. And I have some really strong views around this. Imposter syndrome absolutely is real. And you look at the original piece of research, what characterizes imposter syndrome is a cluster of limiting beliefs. And I am not good enough is one of them. 6 or 7 that were listed in the original research. Here's the thing though. What I think has happened and why this has become a consequence of this having become more popularized is that a lot of people are self-diagnosing, if you like, themselves, self-diagnosing as having imposter syndrome. And here's the thing. I think in probably 99.9% of those cases, that isn't actually what's going on. Because true imposter syndrome is massively disabling and could, in fact, be listed in the DSM. It could be a clinical diagnosis. It is so disabling. I think what's happening is, or what has happened, is that what people are experiencing, what your clients might be experiencing, what you might be experiencing, is actually what I would refer to as self-doubt. Because it's, as adults, when we are confronted with a new situation, so we're having to step out of our comfort zone, whether we like it or not. So perhaps we've applied for a new job and we've got it, or we have been promoted, maybe it's a first-time leadership role, and it's entirely normal in those situations. One of my colleagues Shelley Rose Charvet calls it an incompetency attack. It's entirely normal to ask ourselves this question: am I good enough? Okay. And it's entirely normal to doubt whether we are and to ask that question. But there is an absolute huge chasm of difference, huge, between asking ourselves, am I good enough? And muddling through that somehow until we get to the point where actually we realize we are, because we wouldn't have got the job or we wouldn't have been given the promotion if we weren't, but it can take us a little while to catch up. There's a huge difference between that scenario and actually believing I am not good enough. Huge difference. The first one is a question and it's self-doubt. The second one is a identity level limiting belief. And as I say, the original research, there was a cluster of limiting beliefs. I am not good enough. I should have listed them out. The theme is that I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be here. Others will notice. So there's a huge element of comparison in there as well, which we know is all about limiting beliefs. And it's massively disabling. And I don't believe when I see an article on LinkedIn, someone says, oh, I'm having a bit of imposter syndrome today. I don't think that's where they are. And I'm not sure if they truly did have imposter syndrome and that their biggest fear, think about this for a moment rationally, their biggest fear is being found out. I'm not sure they would be announcing it on LinkedIn. If you think about it rationally, because that's their biggest fear. So what I think is that there's some misunderstanding here and self-doubt, which can as well be, challenging. It's not comfortable and it can tip into anxiety, and somehow we get through it. That's a very different thing, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Okay. So that's what I believe. And I know other people have found that actually quite helpful. And then I think my other kind of concern about this is really how helpful is it when we start labeling things? Because as soon as we add a label, that takes it up to the level of identity. And that only makes the issue harder to address. So, and that is something that, it comes into that discussion again about medical diagnoses and how we label things. And that's a whole other discussion that we'll touch on. So those are my thoughts on imposter syndrome, which brings us to exactly 2 o'clock. There you go. 99% of people who think they have imposter syndrome probably don't. And that was the actual post that went up, which I've popped in there for you. So have a read of that. Okay. All right. We've arrived at the how. Thank goodness. Let's carry on with this because I want to get through it for you. Okay. We're there, finally. How to identify your client's limiting beliefs, because that's the first thing that's got to happen so that you can work with them and help them address them and shift them. Okay, first of all, we have to identify them. Now, what I find when we get to this piece is, because of the pre-teach, we've already covered these, but what we have for you, and of course, observe, watch, listen, talked about that, and feel by stepping into your client's model of the world. We have a checklist. Look at this. Oh, let me do the, don't know if we can shrink it a little bit, if you'll still be able to see it. Here is our checklist. These are categories of limiting beliefs, or at least clues, flags that tell us that somewhere, it's likely that somewhere in this vicinity, there could be a limiting belief. Okay. And let's have a very quick look through these. Okay, so anything you can't feel when you try it on. What does that mean? Okay, we've talked about stepping into our client's model of the world. And I think of it sometimes as trying on a jumper, literally. So, or trying to get your head around this thought process. So I'm thinking of another one that a student shared once, which was, and it still hurts my head, even just saying it. The real world doesn't allow you to have your own beliefs and values. That just, I can't make that fit. It makes me ask the question, okay, what does that mean then? The real world doesn't allow you to have your own beliefs and values. Does that mean then, if we're in the real world, that we don't have any beliefs and values, or do we have someone else's beliefs and values? Or does it mean that we're to have our own beliefs and values, we're therefore not in the real, and it just kind of can't get your head around it. If you try it on, it just doesn't feel right. And that's because what you're hearing, the statement, is distorted. And so when you try it, it's kind of like, what? It's like, what? No, it doesn't, I can't make it make sense. It doesn't feel right. So that's what that one means. And that's the invitation, is whenever you hear one of these statements and you're kind of like, is that a limiting belief? Isn't that a limiting belief? Try it on for size. And if you can't feel it or make sense of it, then yes, it probably is. Okay. We've talked about the complex equivalence already. That's the equal sign in between. And it would have been helpful if I'd put one in here. Need to amend that. But we can also put the equal sign in here between the I am and evil or stupid or not good enough. Because the structure is the same. I am, and we have made I am equal one of those things, which may or may not be accurate. Okay. And then we believe that about ourselves. So I am equals I've made me mean not good enough. So it's the same structure, and you can use the same reframe with that by asking, and what else are you? Because somebody will be more than, even when they believe I am not good enough. That isn't the only thing that they will believe about themselves. And so that question opens it up. And that's what we want to do, because once someone goes into that tunnel vision, we need to open it up. We have possibility. When your client believes something is not possible for them, that's, I think earlier that's referred to as capability. It's the same thing. So the I can, I can't. Okay, I can't be, I can't have. Whenever we hear the can't word, remember the Henry Ford quote. And think back to that initial discussion when you all put the limiting beliefs into the chat. Because these are the categories. Negations, I don't deserve success. Whenever you hear a negative, which could be an emotion, whenever you hear the negative, red flag, limiting beliefs. Necessity, yeah, somebody asked this question earlier, I think, the shoulds. Yeah, whenever a client is using have to, need to, ought to, should, must, any of those, that actually suggests that they don't have a choice. I have to do this. I must do it. I should do it. It's kind of saying they don't have a choice and they don't want to, and yet they're doing it anyway. And 99 times out of 100, what underpins that is a limiting belief. We have the comparative deletions whenever there is a comparison. He is better than me. Or I am not good enough. How many of those did we get in that chat earlier? A lot. Because it begs the question, compared to whom or by whose standard? Now, dissociated language, when you hear it, can be a flag for limiting beliefs. And what that sounds like, it's very, very subtle, is a shift from when your client is talking in the first person to then talking about you or one. And what that sounds like is if they're relaying some event. So, for example, I went for a walk into town. I walked down the high street. I went into Marks and Spencer's. I could hear a bit of furore going on. And as I got closer, I realized there was an altercation. There was a gentleman at the till who hadn't got enough money, and he was arguing. He was demanding to take his shopping and his food. And the cashier was getting really stressed, and it was very loud, and other people were getting involved. And when you witness conflict, you feel uncomfortable. Now, what I've done there is shift from the I, and when you witness conflict, you feel uncomfortable. Now, that's a defense mechanism. It's to keep us safe. It's to create distance between ourselves and the discomfort. So we're not at that point taking ownership of the discomfort that we experienced when we witnessed that. We've kind of done this where we are keeping it at arm's length by changing our language. And we call that dissociated language. And it's very, very subtle. Okay, very subtle. And it may or may not suggest limiting beliefs. It could be related to an incident, as I've just described, and it's kind of just something in the present day. But it's always a kind of, when your client does that a lot, and when they're talking about their emotions, it's a flag again for what underpins that need to create that distance. Okay. here we go. In NLP, these particular emotions are described as negative emotions. Well, I'm not sure I like that really, because it suggests that they're somehow bad, and actually anger, sadness, fear, and guilt are all appropriate in certain circumstances and absolutely valid. Where that's come from is that when we have memories and limiting beliefs associated with those memories that are in the past that are causing us issues in the present, those memories are held in place by the emotion we experienced at the time, which is as yet unresolved. So it's like residual anger and sadness and fear and guilt, and it holds those memories in place. And that's where the word negative has come from, but there can sometimes be a little bit of confusion around that. Again, it may be entirely appropriate for someone to be feeling anger in the present in response to whatever. It may be entirely appropriate, and probably was, that they felt it in the past. The point is, it's still impacting them in the present. And when your client talks about those very specific emotions, again, it suggests that there may be limiting beliefs underpinning that. Generalizations we've covered already: the always, the never, the every, the nobody, the nothing. It always goes wrong, it never works. Oh, they're exhausting just to say them, aren't they? Whenever you hear those, limiting belief, like tunnel vision, intransigent, and what we generally do with those is to challenge them by, how do I say this, kind of making them sound a bit ridiculous. So with love and positive intent for your client, and while in rapport, otherwise it can come across as sarcastic, rude even. We need to challenge that bit. So there was a great example, wasn't there, Zena, on last night's call? Lady in the States, and her sister apparently says all the time that nobody in her city is friendly. And this particular student was saying that, but actually her sister's incredibly unfriendly, and so it's not surprising. And the thing is, you have to challenge the nobody with a kind of very gentle, loving, really? Well, nobody, not a single person. Well, not one time, not once in all the years that you've lived in Wisconsin has a single person ever been friendly to you. And it just begins to kind of shake it up a little bit. And your client will say, well, you know, there was that time 6 years ago when the postman said hello. And even if it's that absurd, it is at least an example of somebody being friendly, which then means that their belief is not true. And that's why we do that. It's challenging the generalization piece. Okay. And absolutely to be done with love, rapport. There is a whole, we cover this in one of the masterclasses. There is a whole model, it's of language patterns that we use in response to these particular structures of limiting beliefs. So actually very short responses, like that one I've just shared, or, you know, the have to, I have to, what would happen if you didn't? That's very specific responses that were developed by a lady called Virginia Satir. And we spend a whole masterclass doing those. Beliefs about health. This one's for Mary. As we've said, we could have a whole separate masterclass on this topic in its own right. It's around There's been so much work done actually by Robert Dilts, who I've mentioned already, about how diagnoses are delivered and the impact of how they are delivered, potentially on someone's longevity. Robert Dilts actually started this work in the area of beliefs because his mother had breast cancer and had been given a terminal diagnosis. She lived on for many, 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 many years following that, and his support. Very interesting, huge stuff around beliefs and how we think can support our health. And that's a very different thing to toxic positivity. And also how we describe our conditions and whether we take them up to that level of identity or whether we regard them as at the behavioral level as a process. Because one of the ladies I learned a lot from around NLP and health, she came in one day, she'd flown in from the States and picked something up on the plane. And it sounded so bizarre, but I remember it so very clearly. She said, "I am fluing." And she was an American lady, so quite an accent behind it. It's like, what? And she in the very, from every literally part of her being, it was how she expressed herself. I am fluing rather than I have flu. And the difference between that is you're not identifying with it. It's not becoming part of who you are. It's the process. I am fluing. And there's a lot of research around health and not going into that space where you say, I have. It's hard to do because it is so ingrained, because of the way we're given diagnoses, because of the way we talk about health and illness. It's very ingrained in how we think about it. And it's something interesting to think about. But yes, we could have a whole separate masterclass on that. We really could. Okay. We are going to look. And we've talked already about how clients have this idea that how they are is the way that they will always be, and that we need to really educate them about how change is possible. That's important as a first step when we're working with clients. Now, what we have here is a list of, it's a process that we work through with a specific limiting belief, questions and statements. So if a client, and this is so very simple and yet so very effective. So after the education piece and bringing your clients' awareness to the fact that actually they can change, they can choose to think differently. When you begin to challenge a limiting belief that they hold in this way, so let's go, shall we, with I'm not good enough, because we've met that one many times now. Client says, I'm not good enough, or I'm not good enough for this promotion, or I won't get this promotion because I'm not good enough. The first thing to ask them, because we actually want to know what their evidence is for this. Okay, we want them to lay it there, everything they've got, leave it all there on the table. So the first thing we ask them is, what is true about this? Because in asking that question, it actually opens up the possibility to perhaps some of it not being true. By asking that question in that way, what is true about this? And your client will download, well, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And then here we go. You go in at number 2 with, is that a belief? And you may already have spoken to them about what beliefs are, and that beliefs are simply thought processes that can help or hinder us. And we can choose to believe something else. So we've kind of let them know that a belief is something that they hold to be true, but it's not necessarily true. And as long as you've pre-framed that with your client and you say, is that a belief? That then creates the space. They're already kind of, is it all true? It's kind of like then, okay, well, it's something I hold to be true, but it's not necessarily true. And my coach has just flagged that up and asked me, is that a belief? That's kind of loosening, changing all of the thought process around this. And they've gone, yeah, that's a belief. That's what I believe. I'm not good enough for this promotion. So then you go, you could choose to believe that. And what that does is suggest to them, therefore, they could actually choose to believe something else. It's making the point that actually this is a choice, because we often don't realize that. Our clients don't realize that. They think what's in their heads is kind of, it's the way it is, it can't change. They don't realize that actually what's in there is what they're choosing. So that gives them ownership of it. And it also suggests that there could be another option. Similarly, with the next statement, this is one perspective. Yeah. What does that suggest? That there might be another one. And then you can ask, because we know that the shoulds and the have tos and all of those, you can ask, do you have a belief about what should be in this situation? Kind of like, okay. And the fact that it's been flagged as being something that should, it's kind of like, okay, then, okay, yeah, that's a should. And maybe there's another option here. And then as coach, you're saying, well, there's a belief. And you can actually keep that going for a whole session. Oh, look, and there's this another belief. And all the while now, your client is aware that beliefs are something that they hold to be true, but they're not necessarily true. And you can keep cycling through that with any of these statements that they make, that you now know from that list of how to identify. Any of those, you can run through this process to begin to, I run a session, I think it's number 2 or 3 on the program, and some of you might have done it before Christmas, the problem box. And I think of the problem, whatever the problem is inside the box, and the bricks that keep the problem in place, they all have the limiting beliefs written on the bricks. And these processes begin to loosen the bricks. That's what's happening here. Okay, so that eventually the walls of the problem box fall down. And that is what this process is doing. It's loosening those bricks. I don't know if any of you were there for that one just before Christmas. So that is a really good place to start. And then what we have, oh, I love that. I used to have that written up on the wall, actually. If you've not come across that before, it's worth really reflecting on. What is the question that has the most potential leverage for creating a shift for this client? Literally used to have that up on the wall, because what you're going to have is a lot of questions here, and you can use these processes in one go, or you can kind of pick questions out. So that's always helpful to have in mind. Which question right now is the one that's really going to create a shift? Okay. Let's look at this first template. Okay. Here we go. This is how this goes. All right. There's the limiting belief on the left. I'm too old to start a new career. What we need to do at that point is help our client realize that actually they are stuck in one way of looking at the situation by asking, is that a belief? We've just done that piece. Are there other ways of thinking about this? And what if you were to consider a different belief? Okay, so we're pretty courageous there, up front, challenging that statement. And that comes to here. Okay. 2. What we want to do then is to ask them to identify actually some more helpful beliefs rather than I'm too old to start a new career. So they're thinking now, aren't they, about are there other ways of thinking about this? And you say, well, what other possibilities are there? And can you think of several other possible beliefs that could change how you see this situation? And your client responds with, well, I might be old, but I have plenty of experience. Or, I am a manager. I have been managing our home and family for years. This is actually a real case study that came from one of my students who is a career coach. This is real, a conversation she had with one of her clients. Okay, so then we want to ask our client to actually step into these other beliefs and try them on for size, so that they've kind of conceptualized them and thought them and said them, but we actually want them to try them on and see whether they fit and how they feel. Remember the belief jumper, so try on the jumper. And then you say, so if this other belief was true, so let's go with this one. I might be old, but I have plenty of experience. What might you notice in this situation?
Abel, shut up.
Oh, could we go on mute, please?
Sorry. I thought I was on mute.
No worries. Okay, so, and then we come to, so we've asked them to try it on for size and asked them what they might notice. And we are at, I actually have a lot of experience and skills to offer. Well, that's quite a step forward, isn't it? From I am too old to start a new career. We've arrived at, I actually have a lot of experience and skills to offer. And then you can help them choose a useful belief by asking them, which of these other beliefs do you think would be most helpful, most useful, as you think about moving into action? And it's kind of morphed into this one from where we were, which was, I actually have a lot of experience. It's kind of morphed into, I can bring real value to this role. That's the belief that they're going with. Okay. And then we are, okay, so we're now kind of going into coaching mode in terms of what's next. We're helping our client create a plan actually from this place rather than where they were before. So with this belief of I can bring real value to this role, what's next? What is the plan? What steps do you want to take? And that brings us to here. Apply for the job, rewrite my CV, book an interview coaching session with you. As I say, this was a career coach working with a client. We want to check that they're ready to commit and that they want to be held accountable. So are you ready to commit? What would it take for you to commit? What could stop you? I'm going to go for it. I need your support, but I won't let anything stop me. Well, that's a huge step forwards from where we started. And then finally, we get to encouraging them to take action by using accountability with permission. So what's the next thing you will do? When will you do it? And what would you like? Would you like to be held accountable? And how do you want to report back? And that brings us to make a list of all my transferable skills and link them to the job requirements. That's what they're going to do next. And actually, she does want to be held accountable, and that's how. I call that a 7-step template because it's got 7 steps. There's a surprise. And I have witnessed this time and time again, where you can move a client through from a really unhelpful belief, identity level belief, into a far more positive place in a coaching conversation, using coaching questions, using questions with this awareness in your mind of how we're moving them from this unhelpful belief to a more helpful belief, to finally taking action from a way more positive place. Okay. How's that working for you, that one? How's that working? Good, because what I would like to do, and you'll have the opportunity to work to either be coach or client. We're going to put you into breakout rooms in pairs. And what I want you to do, if you're being client, I want you to think of that challenging client who you were thinking of earlier when you put that limiting belief into the chat. Okay. And I want you to absolutely step into their model of the world. And I want you to be that client for your coach so that they can run through this process with you using that 7-step template. So insert the limiting belief that your challenging client had at the top, and you are going to be that client for your coach. Okay. Does that make sense? And we're going to give you literally 10 minutes to do this. It'll probably take us about 15 to get you all off into the breakout rooms and get you back, but you've got about 10 minutes. Does that work? 10 minutes to go one way. Yes, that should work. Okay, that should easily work. Can I ask, if you find yourself on your own in the breakout room, please stay there be patient, and we will move somebody else to join you. If you come out to tell us you're on your own, that will only make the process more complicated, as we have found out during this week. So the best thing to do is just stay there, be patient, and we will find somebody to put into your room with you, because we can already see that you're on your own and that your partner hasn't actually joined. So we can deal with it from where we are. You don't need to come and tell us, because that just makes it more. Okay, are you all up for this for 10 minutes then? If you're not, then best to go now, because we don't want to disappoint somebody. Okay. All right. Okay. Zena, are you ready?
Yeah, as soon as everyone stops jumping in and out all the time, it's like keep having to change the breakout room numbers.
Oh, gosh, it's not easy, this piece.
No,
I mean,
it's not. Literally.
Maybe I can start.
yes.
I think it was really good. Hi. I think it was very good because we took a belief that I have on myself.
Oh, okay.
So,
Did one
so
of your own. Okay.
exactly. So it was good to have a quick NLP session, and my coach was great. So I was lucky. Thanks again. And actually, it's really, you know, when somebody is doing to you, you can see the impact of it, effect of it. So definitely, I will try to see how I can use it for my clients.
Brilliant. That is music to my ears, because of course that really is the intention here, that you take what you've learned away and actually do use
And
it.
of course, it was very short. So I'm just thinking,
I
would you
know.
put it in a longer, you know, one session, maybe two sessions with others, so it might be more sticky. And of course, it was it was a small snippet, but a good one.
Yes, absolutely. So, any other thoughts? I'm going to share with you Matt. Hello, we've got Matt. Matt's going to share.
Yeah, hi. No, I had a session with Rosalind. It was a bit chaotic because we actually had 4 in there at one point. But no, it's great. It was one of my limiting beliefs as well, about never finding my true purpose. And even though we probably only had 3 minutes, I had some takeaways from that as well. And certainly something I'm going to use in some of the practice triads that I'm a member of at the moment, to get some actual practice using it before, you know, in a bit more depth before I start using it on actual clients. But no, I thought it's yeah, because I've done a diploma in positive psychology, it all ties in with that really nicely, and I think that's solution focused, and yeah, it's a really good one. So thank you for that.
Brilliant. Well, that is quite impressive, to have some takeaways with a belief and never finding my true purpose. Size of belief in 3 minutes. That really is quite impressive. So I'm delighted to hear that. And yes, it does align very well with a lot of the positive psychology teachings as well. So,
but it was something that it was a real strong belief up to about 6 months ago when I started on this coaching journey. So it's not such a strong one now, but it's still, when I'm down or when I'm tired, and I've been quite ill recently, it raises its head again and goes, oh, you know, you're never going to find your purpose. It's just there. It's like I've been saying it all my life. So, you know, although I'll get over it most of the time now, it's still good to actually do that session based on that, because it's made it a bit clear what I can do to stop that chatter. So
yes, to shift that one. That sounds like a very good idea. Okay, I'm going to take a few more questions. I'm just very quickly going to refer to the walking belief change, which is the final process that you have in your notes. I won't go back to the screen share, but when you read it, there are similarities to the two processes we've looked at in detail, but there are 2 additional stages in the walking belief change. And for that reason, it works very well for the big global type of beliefs, like the world is a cruel place. So Matt, you may want to look at that as well with your particular belief and think through the stages. It introduces the idea of putting the old belief that we no longer want into what we call the museum of old beliefs. And so we're not actually getting rid of the belief, because that's kind of a form of self-violence, because even though our limiting beliefs do not support us, they have been serving a positive intention in some way. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been holding on to them. So when we work through one of these processes and we are able finally to, I sometimes use the term, lay a limiting belief to rest, putting them in the museum of old beliefs is a really good place to put them, because we can revisit them. They're not gone, they're simply there. They're no longer impacting the way that we see the world and therefore our behavior and results. The next logical stage of that process, when we've got the new belief, so similarly to the 7-step process, and you have this new belief, what we want to do is to kind of bolster that new belief, because it's really new and it's not really that kind of strong or powerful yet. And we really want to give it some oomph, if that makes sense. And what this final process, what Robert's process introduces, is the idea of sacred beliefs, which are the beliefs which are positive, affirming beliefs, which we absolutely believe to be true. And it could be something along the lines of the sun will set this evening in the west, and it will be, I know where it is, it'll be over there. And that is something which is indisputable. And so what I want ideally is for my new belief, or if you're working with a client, you want their new belief to take on the qualities of this sacred belief. And so when you work through that process, this is what your client is hearing, and their thinking will do the adjustments, because really it's all about filing. We're filing the old belief in the place where we file those beliefs that we used to believe and we now know are no longer true. So don't want to upset anybody, but the Tooth Fairy, Father Christmas, mine was the streets of London are paved with gold, which comes from Puss in Boots. We want to file the limiting belief in that way. So I used to believe that I can't talk to an audience of 200 people, but I filed that in the way that I filed Puss in Boots, and I now know that it's no longer true. And then you want to file your new belief, your preferred belief, which in that situation for me was I absolutely can talk to an audience of 200 people. And I want to file that in the way that you file, and wherever you put it over there in the west with the sunset, you want it to have the same power and impact as a sacred belief. Okay, and that final process introduces those two stages, both of which are really wonderful actually. But it's very easily laid out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think if you read through it, it will totally make sense to you. Now we've explained those additional pieces to it. Okay, and it's called the walking belief change because it's one of Robert Dilts's. We've met him several times in this session already. And when he works in person with people or trains students, he has these big, huge walking processes where you map out the different positions on the floor. And that's really effective for people who are very kinesthetic and like walking through things. And it's equally effective when you use it in a conversation, and in fact sometimes more effective for people who simply like to think things through. So there's many different ways that you can use these and use them effectively. So my goodness, there we go. We've got a couple of questions. I would love it if you could very quickly pop in the chat what the biggest thing is that you've learned today, what your biggest takeaway is, and what you're going to do with it. Because the very final piece, if you remember, is the what if. What if I did this? So that would be wonderful to share. What's the biggest thing that you've learned? And how are you going to take that away and use it? What if I did this with it? What if I did that with it? Okay, that's amazing. And I'm going to take a few questions. I might be having an impromptu session on Friday. Not sure yet. Depends how my energy levels are. So I will keep you posted on that. And we will be, of course, sending out information about my forthcoming program that starts in May, unless you choose to defer your start until June or July or something like that. So we'll send out all of that information to you. I think Zena has probably helpfully popped into the chat my calendar link. So if that is something that you're interested in, chatting with people next week about that. And I really do find that that is the best way to convey what that's all about and how it can support you in your personal development, your professional development, your coaching skills, and of course your business. Very excited about the forthcoming program. And there are some amazing bonuses, which you'll see when you get the email. Actually, £6,000 worth of bonuses, which is insane, but I have become known for my legendary bonuses. And actually, I have developed a whole new program called the Client's Journey. And because it's the first time I'm running it, I've actually included that as a bonus. So please do have a look at that, because that's going to help people to, it's an end-to-end done for you program, which will run in parallel with the masterclasses. And then it's all about how you apply the masterclass content to your own particular client group. And it's very exciting. So have a look at that. We're even going to go all the way from lead magnet with a masterclass, training you how to run a masterclass, put a group program together, all with NLP at its core. So there you go. Have a look at that. I'm going to take a couple more questions and then we will be finishing. And thank you so much for coming. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really do hope have a quick look at some of the things that you've said in the chat. But let's, Sabine has got a question. Deirdre, Sabine, do you want to ask me?
Yes, thank you for taking that. So actually, the interesting thing is that in this last 2 minutes, my openness to and it was more about how can I be actually more effective in showing up, because whatever I don't allow, they are not allowed. So for me, it was always like, I am not actually entitled because I'm German and the whole German Jewish war thing, it's always at the end of the thing, it feels like war. Yeah, I can think about it. It's like, of course, there are other ways to think about it. Yeah. It never touches me quite really at the core. It was more like, no, the body keeps the score here. At the end of the day, I'm not entitled. And then this last piece of the sacred, the word sacred alone kind of begins to erase that I'm doomed forever feeling. And it's very interesting. I didn't expect it. This just happened in this last 2 minutes, like, oh, because there was something discreetly unsacred about something somehow. I mean, the whole German history, the Holocaust, the wars. I mean, my parents went to the war, their parents went to the war. There's all this overlay of that I somehow really deeply feel. And I mean, I didn't have any of this awareness when I was in Germany for 30 years. Then I moved to New York City. Everybody was Jewish. In my entire life, everybody became, it's very interesting process. But I all of a sudden, I was never entitled. And now I'm realizing this word sacred is really beginning to dissolve this felt obstacle.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
This is what I mean about how powerful this can be, simply used within a conversation without all of the big rah technique stuff around it.
And I've done all this walking stuff. I've done this a million times. And I'm at the end of it, I'm like, yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Well, sometimes it's all of the things we've done so far that bring us to the place where we're ready, and then that final thing, whatever that thing might be, is the thing that makes the difference.
I know.
Something about that
I
word.
mean, I'm like, gratitude to you and everything. It's like, wow, I didn't see that happening.
Wow. Well, I'm really delighted that that's been your experience, and I always say this too, that we come to learn the skills or to take away and use with our clients, and actually it's really hard to sit through an NLP session and for it not to impact us personally. So, and that's very usual. And as I say, I'm delighted that you've had that experience and that word. And it's our head just begins to arrange things in the way that it needs to arrange them. And that can happen very spontaneously. So that word sacred has obviously.
And it's amazing because I've been at this for 30 years.
Yeah, well, when I did a lot of one-to-one client work, I think my oldest client who came out to work with me when I was working in Greece was 76. So she had been at it for a lot of years as well. And oh my goodness, the change that we accomplished in that time was amazing in that week. Right, I think we have one more question. Deirdre.
Hi. Hi.
Go for it.
Make a quick comment and ask a quick question too. The first comment, and I've put it in the group chat there. It's just to say I'm quite happy to do the practice.
Oh, hello, Deirdre. We can't hear you.
Both coach and the other way around. So happy to do that. My name is in there. If you guys want to just hit me up on what do you call it, Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm just under my name. But my question for you is this, Pam, and thank you, Pam, for all that you've done. This has been fabulous. When a belief keeps popping up, so say you've done your template, because that is the way that I was kind of taught to coach anyway. So your limiting belief keeps popping up for the client, even though you've taken them through that process and they have actually come up with the alternatives and they have actually said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And actually, you know, that limiting belief is very limiting and I shouldn't be doing that. And maybe I should be thinking of myself this way. And then they keep popping it back up. What is your advice for when that kind of thing happens? What is there a key question to kind of go back to, or do you go through the entire process?
There is, and I will share it very quickly. Yes, always rerun the process. If you haven't already, the walking belief change or the stages of that one, because of those extra elements, the museum of old beliefs and the sacred belief steps, that brings a whole other dimension in. And if you haven't already, if you have already done that, or if you do that and the pesky limiting belief keeps popping up, the question is, right, are you ready for this? Quickly take notes. Bonus moment here. The question is, what does it do for you when that limiting belief of fill in the blank keeps popping up? What does it do for you? What is the positive intention? That limiting belief keeps popping up. What's the positive intention? What's that doing for you? And you can either go in with, for what purpose? For what purpose that limiting belief, fill in the blank, keeps popping up. And I'm using keeps popping up because that was the phrase you use, because you always use your client's words. But you could also go with, if this was fit better, what's the positive intention of not letting go of that belief? For what purpose to hold on to that belief? So they're all variations on the same theme, like, why isn't this thing going? Okay, and that is chunking up, and that's the one that will That's the one that will get it. And then you can go wherever that goes, and then you can run through the process again, and then you can come back to it, and you can keep chunking up one of those different questions. You can phrase it slightly differently. And then when the moment's right, your client will have a moment like our lady did. I've lost her now. I think she might have gone. With just a single word, sacred, and something changes. Okay. Brilliant.
Thank you, Pam.
All right, brilliant. Okay, well, I think I am going to love you and leave you all, unless there's any specific questions in the chat for me. As I say, please do, if you want to just kind of, you know, talk about what more this could do for you, because I believe you me, if you found value, and I hope you have from this one class, we have so much more that we can help you with, basically. So book in and have a chat about that. I'm going to head off. I'm going into a mastermind session now, briefly, for the last up until 3:30. So it's been absolutely lovely, and we'll be in touch. Kind of different where we have a separate class, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Some of the people who've registered haven't done the class yet. So it tends to be when we get to Friday, when we kind of hit you up with all the wonderful stuff that's going to be happening for you to look at. Okay, marvelous. All right, brilliant. All right, lovely.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you
so much for coming.
Bye all.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Pam.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, Pam, I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Who have we still got? Who's not real? Amy, Rick, BA iPhone, Claudia. Bye, Jane. I don't know whether you can hear me, but I have to go because I've got another meeting. Bye-bye.